Rumble in the Rubble, when Frankenstein met the Wolfman. On the moonlit moors of Llanwelly village, Sir John Talbot rushes to the aid of Gwen Conliffe, who is being attacked by a ghastly man-beast. He clubs the creature to death with a silver-headed cane. Gwen is saved, but Sir John is horrified to discover that he has killed his own son, Lawrence Talbot. The Wolfman is dead. Well, that is, until the studio execs smelt a cash cow in that wolf's skin. As legend has it, screenwriter Kurt Siodmak made a snarky lunchtime remark about making Frankenstein Wolf's the Meat Man, and voila! The monster mashup was born. The Frankenstein Monster already had 4 titles under his belt, so the concept of throwing him in the ring with their latest monster star seemed like a no-brainer. Or at least an abnormal one. Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman opens with one of the most wonderfully atmospheric, establishing shots in horror history. An elaborate moving crane shot that follows 2 unsavory types through a windswept, raven-peppered cemetery in the dead of night. These grave robbers have come to pilfer the mausoleum of the recently deceased Talbot family. One is played by Tom Stevenson, who played Richardson the Gravedigger, the only victim of the Wolfman in the first film. But unfortunately for these 2 guys, when the rays of the full moon fall upon the body of Lawrence Talbot, he once again transforms into the beast, and one of the thieves ends up being his first meal in 4 years. Shortly after, Larry Talbot is discovered miles away by a constable, unconscious and suffering from a fractured skull. He is brought to a hospital in Cardiff, where he is placed under the care of the reasonable Dr. Mannering, Patrick Knowles, who also played a different character in the first film. Talbot can't remember how he came to be there, much to the consternation of the cranky police inspector, but his memory returns in the worst way. The full moon rises, and Talbot transforms while lying in his hospital bed. This particular sequence is the best transformation scene in all the Wolfman films. A beautiful, practically seamless marriage of Jack Pierce's makeup and John P. Fulton's time-lapse effects photography. Once transformed, the Wolfman hits the streets of Cardiff and savagely murders the same constable who discovered him the night before. The following morning, Talbot realizes that he cannot die like a normal person and escapes the hospital. He sets out to find Maleva, Maria Uspenskaya, reprising her role from the first film. The gypsy woman whose son was the werewolf that bit Talbot. She tells Larry she cannot help him, but has heard of a great man of science who can. Maleva agrees to accompany Talbot on a road trip to find the famous Dr. Frankenstein. Arriving in the town of Visaria, Talbot is devastated to learn that Dr. Frankenstein has died, his castle below the dam in ruins. That night the moon rises and Larry becomes the wolf, killing a young barmaid. The villagers chase the werewolf to the castle ruins, where he falls through a floor and into a glacier cave. It's a marvelous set piece. Seeing the Wolfman loping through the glistening ice cavern is a welcome change from the usual fog-laden forests. When Talbot wakes the next morning, he finds an unusual souvenir: the Frankenstein Monster, frozen in the ice. Hoping the monster can direct him to the doctor's records, Talbot lights a fire and thaws him out, as one does. Now, in the previous film, Ghost of Frankenstein, the monster had the brain of Igor, Bela Lugosi, planted in his flat skull. However, a mismatched blood type renders the monster blind. This time, Lugosi plays the monster, which is awkward due to the editorial choice of eliminating the character's dialogue and all references to him being blind. Photographs exist of a filmed but deleted sequence in which Talbot and the monster have a nice little fireside chat, but the exercise scene itself has never been uncovered. When their efforts to find Frankenstein's notes are fruitless, Talbot tries a more direct approach. He arranges to meet the late doctor's daughter, Baroness Elsa, Iona Massey taking over for Evelyn Ankers. Although she says she cannot help him, they attend the local Festival of the New Wine that evening. Here we are treated to a lively musical number, the lyrics of which don't sit well with Talbot. "May you live eternally!" Talbot only wants to die. Just then, Dr. Mannering shows up, claiming that he has followed the trail of the Full Moon murders to find Talbot and demanding he return to the hospital. Talbot refuses, but before things get too heated, the monster interrupts the party. The villagers panic, as they do, and Talbot and the monster escape to the ruins. The next day, Mannering and Elsa travel to the castle. Elsa agrees to reveal the location of her father's records, and Mannering makes plans to operate on both the monster and Talbot, draining the life energy from both of them. However, as almost always happens in these films, Mannering becomes obsessed with seeing Frankenstein's creation at its full power and changes the game plan at the last second. The monster becomes supercharged just as the moon rises and the battle lines are drawn, leading to the explosive climax. Released in 1943, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is jam-packed with wonderful moments, and director Roy William Neill keeps the action moving nicely throughout its 74 minutes. Lon Chaney Jr. is back and is terrific as Lawrence Talbot, the role he would play 3 more times and be most remembered for. Unlike the larger ensemble cast of The Wolfman, this sequel belongs to Chaney, and he alone carries the weight of the story. We see a lot more of the werewolf side this time, and Chaney, along with stuntman Eddie Parker, make him a truly terrifying and dangerous beast. We don't see any gore, but his attack on the constable is quite savage. More fun is a sequence where the Wolfman is pursued by the requisite angry villagers through the forest. It demonstrates that the wolf is extremely agile and even clever, as it feigns being shot to throw his hunters off the trail. Bela Lugosi takes on the role of the monster, which makes some sense since in the last film, Igor's brain was transplanted into the big guy's cranium. The problem is that, physically speaking, Lugosi doesn't really fit the character. So when you add to that the editorial choice of disregarding the blind factor, he comes across as awkward. He does have a great moment toward the end, however, when Mannering's full charge of electricity seems to restore his eyesight, and he cracks a crafty Igor-esque smile. Great scene. Universal regular Lionel Atwill appears as a nice guy for a change, and Dwight Fry, and I think it's his last film, turns up as a concerned villager. Look closely for character actor Jeff Corey, who you might know from Beneath the Planet of the Apes and True Grit, as a crypt keeper, and the movie debut of The Big Sleep's Martha Vickers as a victim of Talbot's werewolfery. The movie has its share of missteps, but maintains its continuity a bit better than some of the other Universal horrors. While the story is directly connected to the previous The Ghost of Frankenstein, the locale doesn't match. In that film, the monster perishes inside Dr. Frankenstein's modern estate, yet the ruins presented here are an older structure more closely resembling the castle from, like, The Bride of Frankenstein. Another often discussed confusion regards how Talbot changes out of his hospital pajamas after transforming, or how he's wearing shoes when he wakes up in the ice cavern, or what is the fate of old Gypsy Maliva, who just sort of disappears from the end of the story in the third act. These are big questions, but forgivable in light of all the other things that make Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman so enjoyable. Of course, the scene we wait for is the climactic battle between the two monsters, which, except for close-ups, is mostly played out by stunt performers Gil Perkins and Eddie Parker. The two crash and thrash and destroy the library until an exploded dam breaks up the party. Like many of the Universal monster films, the end credits roll immediately after the titular characters have met their supposed demise. Of course, the studio was hardly finished with these two, so the film's success brought the Wolfman and the monster back 3 more times in the following 5 years. Now, there have been many monster team-ups over the years, from Godzilla films to the animated Mad Monster Party to Fred Decker's wonderful The Monster Squad, but Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman has the honor of being the very first. And come on, who doesn't enjoy a good monster fight? This has been Frank Dietz. Thanks for listening.